welcome to the podcast. Finally, we
Hi.
have met.
Yes, finally, it's been a long time we've been planning this. Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah,
Good to meet you.
like and we'll move on to the questions directly. So, firstly, tell us something about yourselves which we do not find in any of your social media profiles.
Okay, so there are like certain, about my interest, maybe I can talk about, apart from, academic, whatever I've been doing, I really love organizing events. Like, even when I was in IIT Madras or even before that in my flat, me and my friends, we just, all used to like organize certain events. I just like interacting with a lot of people, like conducting games or like social events and stuff. So in IIT, I was, part of the Sarang Shastra, which are the cultural and technical festivals. So as part of those organizing teams, and I really love that. That's kind of my passion.
That's nice now. And moving on, could you talk to us about your research?
Okay, so all my research is generally from the field of computational material science. So it's kind of the intersection of the material science, chemistry, and physics related to that, and the computational aspect where we use tools like molecular dynamics, density functional theory, or even these days machine learning, artificial intelligence, all those to enhance the discovery of different materials and in general for the betterment of material science. So that is the
Mhm.
broad area in which I work in. And so
Mhm.
all my projects, before an IIT Madras were also, from this field of computational material science. I used to work a little bit, on like material property prediction, band gap prediction, so and so, like using machine learning and stuff. Currently, my research work is currently on, sodium ion batteries.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's like
So,
a just you want me to go more into it?
if you're fine, you can go ahead now.
Okay, okay. So currently my work is actually in sodium ion batteries. So as we know today, most of the batteries in commercial production are all like based on lithium ion.
Mhm.
So, and it's sodium ion is like, much more abundant and easier to extract also compared to lithium. So people have been working on developing sodium ion batteries. So still it has not been commercialized in most parts of the world. So it's like a government funded project where like several different research groups across the United States are working in it. So I
Mhm.
am, part of the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory also. It's kind of like a national lab associated with right next to UC Berkeley campus. So my lab and my professor is associated with the Berkeley lab. So I work there. So as a part of it, it's like a whole sodium ion consortium that we have been working on, developing like new anodes, cathodes, electrolytes, and overall like cell sodium ion cells. So our major aim is to, bring down the cost of the cells as well. Like when we do, so it'll be because sodium ion is much more cheaper. So it will be slightly more cheaper and also, much more easy to produce in case, once we get like the proper composition of anode, cathode, and electrolytes that would
Right, right.
efficiently work as good as the lithium ion batteries.
That's nice now. And yeah, next, how has life been at Berkeley so far? And is the differences in the research environments at Berkeley and IIT Madras? What are some of the
Okay.
differences?
So, of course, the first thing is definitely like much more resources in Berkeley, and like
Mm.
top colleges like, Berkeley or MIT, Harvard, like these kind of places, a lot of resources and a lot of financial support that we'll be able to get. So, if we require any tools, in my case, like all resources, just like computational tools, in case we require like particular softwares which have to be paid and got, we can always request the guide. And then it's much easier to get it over here than in IIT. I mean, IITs are also pretty good, but it's like, much more convenient over here. So that is
Mm.
there. And there's like much more like a lot of international community here in places like in the United States. So it's like people are there from all around the world. So you get like various different perspectives that people bring around. Some people might have done their undergrad in different countries or PhDs in different countries and they're here for postdoc. So in that case, we get to see a lot of different ideas and methodologies within the field.
Right now. Did you like only apply to Berkeley or did you apply to many other institutes? And what made you choose Berkeley in specific?
Okay. So I had applied to like about five colleges in the US and like EPFL in Switzerland alone. So I had
Hmm.
previously done like a 3 month internship in EPFL Switzerland and I really liked working there. So I applied to that place alone in Europe. Apart from that, in US, I applied, to Northwestern University, which is very good for materials, and then MIT, Caltech, Berkeley. So like four or five colleges here. And then ultimately, my first preference was Berkeley because in PhD rather than the university, the professor like is very important. The
Hmm.
research group where you're going to work in because ultimately you're going to travel along with that research group and the professor like for 4 to 5 years at least. So in that case, like for computational material science, there are like three to four very top professors in Berkeley. So one of them is the one I work with, like Kristen Person. So she's kind of the director of materials project also. So it's like
That's
materials
nice.
project is like a huge database for material science, and
Mhm.
she's the director for it. So it's like a very established group. So she was I really wanted to work with her. So.
That's nice one. That's really nice. And you have a lot of experience in machine learning as well. Could you tell us how ML has been useful in material science and what are the future prospects you see?
Hmm. So these days, machine learning is being used in like every field. So material science also is like no exception. So it's like, we use it like in the, these computational material science projects have like huge pipelines where there are multiple steps. So these machine learning things just insert into these pipelines, to enhance or speeden up the process in certain things. So for example, when, we run some of these simulations, we might require some data that we have to input into the simulations.
Mhm.
It could be, some kinetic data or, some band gap values, something in the overall pipeline. So it is much easier, to predict these, let's say these band gap or kinetic data, those kind of things using like machine learning or AI and stuff, because finding them experimentally is like very cumbersome. And then also running them through, DFT, like functions like DFT to find out these properties also is like very time consuming and, computationally expensive. So machine learning that's where it comes into play, because many times when we do these computational approaches, these are all high throughput methods. So it's like we are trying to screen like thousands of materials or thousands of compositions. So it's like much easier if there is some amount of machine learning inserted into it, to overall make the process very efficient.
Achha, I see. And in continuation, could you talk about use of ML in your specific use area that is in predicting the properties of battery materials and stuff?
Hmm. Okay. So currently, within the batteries, I work in the electrolyte section. Or we're just trying to figure out what the composition of electrolyte should be. So it's like the salt, the solvent, and the additives. And then generally
Mhm.
the electrolyte, forms like a solid electrolyte interface with the anode. So we're trying to, figure out like how the SEI, the solid electrolyte interface forms, and then what is its composition and stuff. So that's like overall my broad research. So within this, we run like certain things like reaction network generation. So that is something that we do to figure out like what would be the final products in the ACI. So for
Okay.
that, we in the process we require some bond energies, bond association energies, or some kinetic data, as I was talking about before. So these bond association energies, in our lab we have had like previous works where we have graph neural networks and stuff to predict these bond energies. So which would, be very useful for, running our reaction network itself. So there are
Mhm.
like certain aspects in which machine learning is like used in our lab like extensively. Yeah.
And could you talk to us about this kinetic data? You've been referring to that many times. Like, what is it? And
Okay. So, getting like thermodynamic, so there are like major, like, two major things that, for a reaction to happen. One is the thermodynamic aspect, like whether the free energy change is negative, then the reaction will
Mhm.
happen. And the other thing is kinetic. So some reactions, might be like feasible, but then they might take a long time to occur. So it may not be practically, actually happening because of the kinetic limitation. So there are like certain things that you might need, to get the kinetic data, like the activation barrier for the particular reaction to occur, which influences the kinetic energy and so on. So this activation energy barrier is something that, we can try to predict using like machine learning. And there have been, certain works before also in our lab, which we try to utilize. So once we, are able to predict those kinetic data, we could incorporate that also into our reaction network generation.
Right.
So
I
currently,
see.
majorly we use only the thermodynamic aspects and not how fast or how slow a reaction occurs. So it would be much more, accurate if we include the kinetic data as well.
Right now. That's nice. And yeah, critical materials like cobalt and lithium pose very highly ethical and environmental concerns. And how does your research address these challenges as while advancing the battery performances as well?
Right, right. Yeah. So first thing, as I said, that's why, we are working towards sodium ion batteries. So which is, much more abundant and slightly easier to extract as well. And the overall goal of this project, is not just from a scientific perspective. So what happens
Mhm.
many times in research is, when we work, especially, what happens is that we just focus on, developing a particular material that's really good and efficient. But we know sometimes we miss on the factors like scalability and commercial production.
Mhm.
So some material might actually be very good, but the problem in using it, it might be expensive, or it might pose like environmental concerns, or it might not be scalable the entire process. But then
Right.
the good thing about the project that I've been working on, it's like, as I said, it's like a government funded project where together our entire goal is to make sure that this battery that we are going to come up with is scalable, environment friendly, and also like commercially viable. So in that case, so we are trying to avoid like certain elements like nickel also, like which is like much more expensive to extract and use. So generally in cathodes they use materials as you mentioned like cobalt, nickel, iron, manganese and stuff. So we are
Mm.
trying to bring down compositions of nickel, which is like much more expensive. And as you said, like lithium also has some problems. So that's why we are coming up with sodium ion batteries.
That's really nice now. And we'll get a bit non-technical now. What made you choose a career in research despite being so much exposed to placements after your UG from IIT Madras? You did not get
Okay.
any peer influenced or something. Many of your batchmates might have gone for placements. I may be wrong as well, but yeah, what do you think?
Right. So this thing was definitely there, especially. So I'm like a dual degree student in IIT Madras. So it's like my
Okay.
BTech was in material science and my MTech is in data science. It's like an interdisciplinary dual
Mhm.
degree. So in the beginning of my fifth year or end of fourth year, when everybody was getting ready for placements, the confusion was definitely there. I was also like, maybe should I go for placements? I spoke to a couple of professors and stuff. But my interest was always, to become a professor. Like ultimately, that's kind of my,
That's nice.
goal to be in academia. Have my own research group and a little bit of teaching, and then interacting with certain industries, for consultation and stuff. So I found that to be like very interesting in general. So, and I know, I must pursue a PhD and then a postdoc, and then to become a professor. So I was like, okay, then I'll, this is my interest. I'll stick to it kind of. But I did sit for placements just for, the fun
That's
of it.
nice.
I just wrote like a couple of exams and, I ultimately got into some role also in Bangalore. It's like kind of like a CEO office role in like a very nice startup. So I
Okay.
got into it. But then after that, it was just for an experience. Then I told them, like, I would prefer, continuing, only with my PhD idea. And so
So
instead
did
they
you work there
recruited
or you
somebody
just went there
else.
for the placements?
No, no. I
Okay.
just so placement during the placement season IIT Madras. I just sat through the process. Just like for I was just hanging around with my friends primarily. Like I was supporting them throughout the interview process and stuff. So in that process, I also
Okay.
got an interview. I just simply went to it. Yeah,
So like you
yeah.
did not have any parental pressure for you to go for placements, and how did you, if you had?
No. Yeah. So thankfully not. So my parents were like very supportive. They're like, if your interest is PhD and so it's fine. But sometimes grandparents used to ask, you already studied for 5 years, BTech
Ah,
plus MTech in IIT Madras, and now you're saying another 5 years you're going to study, when will you settle down in life? So grandparents used to ask a little, but then it was like not that hard to convince because my parents were very supportive. They were like, you do what you're really interested in. So it was yeah. And one more thing is I really, wanted to put my material science to use. What happens in placements, in like many IITs or NITs also, many people, tend to go to like non-core fields. Like in most non-core in the sense, people get into like coding, pure data science or,
yep, yep, yep.
consult roles, these kind of roles. But then, we've studied like material science for like 3 to 4 years. So really thought it's like interesting. And I thought, I must, use it somewhere in life. So I thought this will be like a perfect place where I use little bit of computational aspects also, whatever I studied from my data science in my MTech and then the material science that I studied for 4 years. So it's like kind of like a nice intersection to work on. So I just, chose to continue in research.
That's really nice now. And almost we
Yeah.
are, yeah, nearing to the end of the podcast. And like moving on, that's a regular question. If there is something you could go back in your past and tell yourself or fix, what would it be and why?
Mhm. Actually, to be on, oh, yeah. So the thing is, I really do not want to, change anything. Like I don't have any regrets in my life so far. So the thing is, there were so many confusion points, back then, especially, during JOSA time when, you have to choose between different branches and stuff. So like the key option is always like I had IIT Madras Metallurgy and Materials Engineering or NIT Trichy CS.
Hmm.
So this is like a very common confusion many people get into. But then ultimately, I spoke to like a little bit of, seniors I knew in IITs and stuff. And then they said, the IIT tag would be helpful at times. And so I
Hmm.
ended up taking it and no regrets at all. So like
So you
totally, it's
feel
like
that
a
you have
very
made the
good
very
path.
right decision that not going for an editor CS.
Oh, see, I wouldn't say that would have been a bad choice either. Maybe it would have ended up good as well. But this, I'm like very content with it. And it's been like a very good decision. Yeah.
Perfect,
Yeah.
amazing. And
Yeah.
one final advice you have for all the undergraduate students and all the school students.
So like especially for undergraduate students in like their early years, like at least the first or second year, it's like I would ask them to explore different things rather than so currently the trend especially in India is like everybody goes towards this coding data science. I mean sure it is like very good, but then you can also try out your core fields, whichever branches you may be in, chemical, mechanical, material science, whichever field it may be. So you could, try, working with some professor, like, for like a short project, like 3 months or 6 months or whatever. I'm sure like many colleges have provisions to do that. And, see if you're actually interested in that. Because what happens is sometimes, when you learn courses in a particular field, you're not really applying it to any particular, application and stuff many a times, unless there are like very good projects. So people feel like these courses are very boring. So what am I going to do with it? And, they just prefer going into like consulting and coding. But I strongly recommend that you explore working with some professor for a few months and see if you're genuinely interested in it. And you never know, you might be interested in and end up doing like a PhD or master's in the field. So I think that would be my like key advice to uh, juniors. Yeah.
You did not have any experience. Did you have experience in some industrial internships as well, or like were all our research internships?
So in our in IIT Madras Material Science Department, we have like a compulsory, at least
Okay.
6 weeks core internships that we had to do during my period.
Hmm.
So I
I
did
see.
work in like Brakes India, in
Hmm.
Chennai. So Brakes India, they manufacture this. It's associated with the TVS group. So me and my friends, like three, four of us, we did like a 6 week internship during winter. It was like December to January. But then
Hmm.
again, it wasn't like a very on ground role. So it's like we had to go to the plant only like maybe weekly once or twice, or like, even more rarely, just to collect some data. And then again, the project was mostly a little bit computational. So they wanted to, incorporate some amount of machine learning and stuff, to enhance their, some processes, to fine tune their parameters in the production. So we were just helping in that process. So it was not very on ground. But it was definitely a very good experience, to see how, these kind of things that we learn on how it is getting implemented in industries.
Okay. I see. I think we are done
Yeah.
now. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. It was, very fun having you here, and have a good day.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was great talking here.